Should I drop insurance or keep working with it? That's the question. That's why you're here. My name is Kevin Johnson. I'm the CEO of Leverage Consulting and the creator of Leverage U, an online university. And for the last 23 years, I've been working with clients to answer this exact same question. Should I drop insurances or not? And let's just get to the point. Is the answer yes or no? Well, it is absolutely a yes. You should drop insurances, but it is equally a no. And it's a no if you don't have a plan. And the reason is, many times when we ask this question, should I drop insurance? It's an emotional decision, or it's an emotional question that we're asking because we've been ticked off. I can't tell you over the years, the words, phrases, and comments that I've heard over the years from clients when they're talking about insurance and their participation. I've heard people say the devil. I've heard people say shyster. I've heard people say some somewhat unsavory things. But we have to remember, and let's start with, what role does dental insurance play in your practice? And this is a question that came up at a workshop that I was delivering to a group just this past weekend. And when I finished up the session, I could tell a lot of people, a lot of the points were hitting home with them, but it made them then go back and question, should I drop dental insurance? And one of the participants, one of the doctors raised their hand and said, should I get rid of insurance? And the answer that I gave him, and it evidently really resonated with him, because it wasn't just a yes or a no. It was you're in charge of the scenario and you have to have a business plan. So when you ask this question, should I drop insurance? The fundamental understanding is dental insurance serves a role in your practice in the sense that it is a way to market your practice. Think of it as you have the scales of justice. You have the scale where you can either take all insurances, and you have to do a little marketing because people will just pick up the phone after they found you online through an insurance provider or something else. They will pick up the phone, call you, and say, I need an appointment. That's what dental insurance serves as. They are, in a sense, a marketing plan without having a marketing plan. So if you want to consider getting rid of insurance, you have to then, and I'm going to get to this about having a business plan, but you have to consider what is the actual plan that you have to compensate for getting rid of insurances. And when we ask this question, sometimes we think, well, I'm going to drop all insurances, as opposed to maybe it's a methodical process. Maybe it's a process of elimination. So it's not all at once. It might be something where you start chipping away at it over time. So this gets us to, what are the 5 things we should really do? What are the first 5 things? And I said sometimes we arrive at that question after we become a little emotionally charged. And we might be ticked off at an insurance company that's suddenly denying claims, or we might be ticked off at an insurance company that suddenly is slowing up in their payment process. They're becoming more difficult. They're lowering your fees, or that you've maybe just run some numbers recently and figured out they're paying a very low percentage compared to your fees. And I'm talking about your full fee. So with that said, that brings us to the first thing on the list. If there's 5 things you're going to do to consider whether I drop insurances, is the first thing is you need to run the numbers. It's the same thing I do with clients, is we run the numbers and we figure out how many patients we saw in a given year under that plan. How much did we produce in that year under that plan? How much did we collect? So those are 3 very hard numbers that we can look at and say, how much did we produce? How much did we collect? And how many patients did we see? Now, there's another number that's in there, which in a sense, it somewhat fleshes out in the calculations there. But the other number is that you want to know how much you had in write-offs, because ultimately you produced a certain amount, you collected a certain amount. That number in the middle is your adjusted production, or how much you wrote off. And then we had the number of patients that we saw. The other thing that you can also do, those things are quantitative factors. The other thing that you can do is ask your team how difficult it is to deal with each one of those plans. So on a scale of 1 to 10, your difficulty rating might be, say, how hard is it for us to verify benefits for a patient? For one plan, it might be something very quick online, takes me 45 seconds, we're done. With another plan, it might take your team 30 minutes to do the same thing. Another would be whether they're difficult in terms of submitting a claim and ultimately getting paid. There's a span of time in there where a lot of things happen, and the insurance companies may become difficult and start kicking back claims saying they need more, they need narratives, they need x-rays, they need more information. They're just denying it for whatever reason. And that in a sense becomes part of the difficulty. Also, the span of time that they may take to actually pay you. So those are running the numbers. And in a sense, it sounds somewhat complicated, but when you see the numbers in front of you, you will likely start to see a pattern start to evolve. And much like another client recently, they just ran their numbers and found out they're getting paid about 45% of what their full fee is. And when you really start looking at what the overhead is for an average practice, that's well below. So in a sense, they're almost paying to see those patients. So at some point, you have to look at it mathematically, look at it almost like you're an accountant, look at the numbers and say, does it even pay to stay with this plan? So that was number one, which is run the numbers. Number two is customer service has to be a system, not when we have time for it. It has to be the overriding thing that we provide, because if you choose to, and with the next couple of these things on this to-do list, the thing that you have to really think about is, if I'm going to eliminate insurances, I have to think about how I am compensating for not having it. So what is going to be the draw? That's a question. When I eliminate one plan, or if I eliminate all plans, how do I replace the patient flow? How do I replace them? How do I keep people calling my practice? So part of your marketing plan has to be customer service. How are people treated? Is it something where we roll out the red carpet, white linen tablecloths? And you might think that your practice has to look like the Taj Mahal. It does not. We just have to treat patients fantastically. We have to treat them phenomenally well. And it's not just one team member. It's not just the doctor. It's not just the person that answers the phone. Every person there. Think of it just like going to a restaurant. You expect everyone in a restaurant to treat you really well. Whoever greeted you at the door, the waiter or waitress, if you see the manager walking around, you expect everyone to treat you well. You want the same thing for your practice in terms of how we treat our patients. So make customer service a system. And then the next thing, number three, which if we do a great job with number two, which is customer service, then we keep building reviews, because that's one of the first things patients will do. You do it every time you decide, I'm going to buy a new phone, I'm going to buy a new car, I'm going to buy whatever it is. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to pick up your phone and you're going to start looking at Google reviews, Facebook reviews, or some kind of review somewhere. You want to know what other people have said about that product or service. Patients do the same thing with your practice. So you need to look at what are patients saying, and are we driving reviews? So I did the math with the group last week, the workshop that I was doing. And I just did the math with their average practice in the average practice in the room. And we basically figured out that they should be adding an average of 330 reviews every year. So think about how many years you've been in business. If you even take the last 5 years, okay? If you've been in practice for the last 5 years, do you have over 1,500 reviews? Start thinking about the number of patients that come through. Start thinking about the number of patients that should be happy. And even say, okay, not all of them will leave me a review. Even 25% of them, I guarantee you'll likely come up with a number that's greater than 1,500 for the last 5 years. So turn the reviews into a system to where we are promoting and collecting these reviews, so we have something to share with other patients, other people in the community who are considering going to a practice like yours. So number 4 is we have to have a marketing plan. Because again, what was the function of dental insurance? It's a way to get people to pick up the phone, call your practice and say, I need an appointment. So that's really the biggest thing that they serve for you, because again, you are being paid, you're not being paid. You're in a sense being paid for the service of what you provide to the patient, but you're not being paid for all the hoops that you jump through to actually administer or maximize that dental insurance for that patient. Think about that for a minute. You have to work to collect the money that should be somewhat easy to collect. It's much like your team members. They come in, they work 40 hours or 32 hours, whatever the number is, And then at the end of the week, they get a paycheck. They don't have to pay someone to actually get their paycheck. They don't have to pay or fight to get their paycheck. It just automatically shows up in their account. That's not how it works with dental insurance. So we have to have a marketing plan that overcomes or displaces our need for our dental insurance. And that's really the way to look at this is will your marketing plan outclass, outpace, outperform dental insurance in terms of driving people to your practice? So it's a comprehensive system, and at any given time, you should have at least 15 strategies that are being implemented. And some of that should be online, some of it should be social media, some of it should be in the office, and some of it should be community-based. But you should have a comprehensive marketing plan, and it might sound like a lot, but think about the number of hours and expense that you incur as a result of having or participating with dental insurance. So the fifth thing on my list, the last thing on the list, is treatment coordination. And you might wonder, well, how does this fit in? Think about it for a minute. Treatment coordination, and whether it's just finding somebody to make sure that they keep the chairs filled, or we actually have a system and one person who's responsible for maximizing our treatment acceptance in the office. It's something that we do. It's a system that we have to ensure that we actually have our chairs filled and patients are being served. That's one of the ways, because most practices, many practices, they keep the chairs filled because they have an abundance of patients coming in, and in a sense, we're losing people. Imagine this bucket has holes in it. So patients are going through the holes in the bucket because we don't have time for keeping up with them, or we don't have a system for keeping up with them. We may have proposed treatment to them, and ultimately they may fade away into the distance. They may go to another practice. Life might get in the way, but in the end, they still need treatment. Every practitioner I've ever talked to and worked with, they've proposed things that the patient needs. Now, needs and wants are one of those things that we can sit back and talk about the definition of either one of those. But in a sense, the need and want can be variable based on what you as a practitioner say they need and what it is that the patient wants, because wants can become needs and vice versa. So with that said, the treatment coordination is there to ensure that we're capturing every patient who wants the treatment that you have proposed, and we keep them motivated and we problem solve how to keep them in the chair. That too is a system. So when you think about the 5 things that I've talked about, that if you can answer those 5 things and say, we have a business plan, that's the thing you really have to look at is, do we have a business plan to outperform, to outpace our dental insurance flow of new patients? And in a way, and this is something that I did with another client recently, where we basically did the math and said, how much are you writing off? And how, if you put even 1/3 of that number. So in this case, this person had written off $300,000. And some of you might laugh a little bit there when I say that number, because your write-off number might be significantly larger. But in this case, they had written off $300,000 in a year. So if you've written off $300,000, what if we just put $100,000 into a marketing budget? It's an investment. That's something that a lot of people really don't look at, is that their practice is their greatest investment. So if you took that $100,000 and put that into a very deliberate marketing program, you'll put yourself in a position where you can eliminate the write-offs. And something else to think about is you can likely eliminate the need for staffing. And it's not to say to fire staff, but it is to refocus their efforts. And imagine if I can get rid of the need for my team to fight insurance companies, but create the capacity and the availability for them to ramp up my customer service and my internal marketing. Fabulous idea, right? So that's the question. Now the question is in your lap. Should you or should you not drop insurances? That's the question for you at this point, because if you can say, I have a business plan for this, and you can then run the numbers. If the numbers don't bear out right now, if you do the other 4 things, you ask that question again 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, it's very likely you will be in a position to legitimately say, I'm thinking about dropping at least one plan. So if this is the kind of content that you find valuable for yourself, your team, and your practice, and you could see this type of content helping you level up your practice and get away from stress and creating more production, hit the like, hit the subscribe, and hit that notification button, because this is a type of content and video that I'll be putting out for you to help you grow your practice.